We shall see. Hello,
Hello.
everyone, and welcome to our book club discussion. It's Monday night. It is, I don't know what month it is, September, I think. But we are all abuzz and super excited for our book club discussion tonight because we have the fabulous Wanda Morris on finally for book club discussion. We've had her on before in happy hours, and she's a favorite of ours. So we cannot wait to discuss this masterpiece, What You Leave Behind. Um, I'm Lisa Harrison, and I'm here with my co-host Brenda.
Hello.
So without further ado, Brenda, do you want to go ahead and introduce our author tonight?
I would love to because I can't wait to get into this. Our guest tonight is Wanda Morris, the award-winning author of three novels, including today's selection, What You Leave Behind. Her first novel, All Her Little Secrets, won the 2022 Lefty Award for Best Debut Mystery Novel and 20, that's a tongue twister, 2022 finalist for Georgia Author of the Year for Best First Novel. It was also nominated for the Anthony Award, the Strand Critics Award, the McCavity Award, and shortlisted for the Crooks Corner Book Prize. All Her Little Secrets has been optioned for a limited series starring and executive produced by three-time Emmy winner Uzo Aduba. I'm sure Lisa will ask about that. Wanda will also serve as an executive producer. Her latest book, which we're here to talk about tonight, What You Leave Behind, hit the shelves in June and has also received critical acclaim, including a starred review from Booklist and stellar reviews from Publishers Weekly and Library Journal. It was named one of the best books of the year so far for 2024 by Amazon editors. Wanda is a former corporate lawyer, a member of Crime Writers of Color, and serves on the board of International Thriller Writers. She's married, the mother of three, and lives in Atlanta, Georgia. A big book club welcome, Wanda.
Yay!
Hello.
Welcome.
Hey, hello everyone. Hello. Thank you
We
for
are
having
so happy you're with us.
me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we first want to start off and say happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Did
Thank you.
you do anything fun to celebrate?
You know what? I did exactly what I wanted to do, which was nothing.
Good.
I just kind of wanted to chill out on this birthday, and I did exactly that. Well, I did that all weekend. My birthday was on Friday the 13th, which I absolutely love. 13 is my favorite number, but like last night, Sunday night, late, I decided, I want to do something for my birthday. My husband's like, I got to go to work in the morning. I was like, oh, well, okay. So, anyway, but it was very nice. Thank you very much for the birthday wishes.
Yes.
Big book club happy birthday to you from all of us.
Thank
Well, Wanda, we're here tonight to talk about what you left behind. And I have to say, this book had me from the get-go, from the first interstitial about the horrors at Dunbar Creek and the ancestral, information it had. Oh, I mean, it just had everything. It had family, legacy, corruption, grief, just all bundled together. So we'll get into questions from readers in a moment. But could you give us a summary for those watching who haven't read it? And again, we talk spoilers after 7:15 p.m. and we'll give a spoiler warning, readers. So if you have any questions now, put them in the chat for Wanda.
So yeah, what you leave behind is the story of Dina Wood, and Dina is going through it. I mean, my girl is like in the trifecta of misfortune. She
Mm-hmm.
has gone through a painful divorce. She has just been fired from her very prestigious job at an Atlanta law firm, and she's still grieving the death of her mother, who died the previous year. And so, with all this, she decides, you know what, I need to check out for a little bit. So, she leaves Atlanta and she returns to her hometown of Brunswick, Georgia. And and coincidentally, she returns home. Her father has remarried 6 months after her mom died to her mom's best friend. So, like I said, Dina is going through it.
Yeah.
But as part of her grieving process, she just like kind of drives around the city, kind of missing her mother and trying to clear her head. And she parks on this oceanfront property one day, just to kind of get out, take a walk. And it's there that she encounters Holcomb Gardner, who is an older gentleman. He sees her on his property. He runs her off with a shotgun, tells her, don't come back because he's mistaken her for somebody like a real estate agent or something. And he tells her he's never going to sell the land. Um, she quickly leaves, but for some reason, she can't get the guy out of her head. And she returns a week later just to kind of drive by and see what's going on. And the man is gone. The trailer he was living on the property is gone. Even his little dog is gone. So everybody's disappeared. But now there's a for sale sign on the property, and he vowed he would never sell his property. And Dina is a wee bit nosy, well, maybe a lot nosy. And she thinks, what happened to Oakham Gardner? And it's there that she starts to kind of dig around to find out what happened. And she winds up uh, becoming embroiled in an illegal land grab that gets her into all sorts of trouble. But ultimately, she is out to save not only a man's legacy, but also her own community.
Loved it.
That's mhm.
I can't. We have a few minutes before spoilers. So, one question I'm like, I can't wait to dive in. Um, One question that we've had a couple of members ask us about is the beautiful cover.
Mm.
And well, first off, the spine, the cover, and also the title. Was the title always what you leave behind? And can you talk about this beautiful cover?
Yeah.
Um,
So, if you've read or you've seen my two previous books, they always have, they feature a woman on the cover. And for this particular book, the art director thought, this house features so prominently in the book. um, how about we put that on the cover? And I was like, I'm game. What I didn't expect was the beautiful array of colors that just really capture kind of the mood of the book, if you will. My only request that I made was to have kind of the moss, the Spanish moss dripping from the trees, because that's really indicative of live oak trees in southern Georgia, in low country Georgia. And I thought, I really would like to see that. And so, William Morrow, the art department, just kind of knocked it out the park. I love, love, love the colors. As for the title, something you have to understand about me is that I'm horrible with titles. Horrible. I mean, like seriously. My first book, All Her Little Secrets, if you've heard my story before, it took me 13 years from the time I wrote the first scene until that book was published. That whole time, well, almost the whole time, um, I had been calling that book The Elephant Fighter because it so, kind of encapsulated what the book was about. Because The Elephant Fighter was a title based on an African proverb, and it's in the book and everything. And so I just loved that title. And, when it was time to put the cover together, they were like, well, that's not thrillery enough. And I was like, what's that title? And so they were like, no, you're gonna have to come up with a different title. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, I've been living with this title for what, 10, 11, 12 years, had the hardest time. And finally, my editor was like, you're going to have to come up with the title. She called me like on a Friday. You're going to have to come up with the title by Monday. Otherwise, the sales department will have to pick the title of the book. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. And so I just started jotting titles and I came up with that really literally like Monday morning at 9 o'clock. And so that is kind of me with titles. It was the same thing with Anywhere You Run. I had a title called Blood Sisters. They were like, nah, that ain't cutting it. And I was like, oh no. And so, like, the 12th hour, there I was trying to come up with the title. So for this one, I just turned the book in and I was like, I don't have a title for it. And once again, the threat. You don't come up with a title, sales department will come up with a title. I was like, nobody can name my book babies. I have to name my book babies. And so I thought that that title would be appropriate because it goes to kind of the underlying theme of the story, which is
Yeah,
getting a community, getting people to think about those things that you leave behind, both material and non-material. So yeah,
yeah.
that's my long way of saying I'm horrible at titles.
I think you might think you're horrible, but if you're coming in at the 12th hour with these powerhouse titles, I think that's pretty good.
I think it is too. I gotta say, because and the thing I loved about the title was there was so much meaning behind it because,
Mhm.
as you said, material things, but also your legacy and what you're leaving to your descendants. And I just thought it was fabulous.
Thank
Yeah.
So,
you.
yay,
Thank you
way to
for
hit one out of the park.
that. Thank you for that.
Well, we're almost at spoilers, but I did want to ask you, Wanda, in your afterword for this book, and I don't think this is really a spoiler, but you mentioned how you came about the sort of nugget of this book, how you stumbled upon a news story about heirs property. I've heard about heirs property, but had no idea the impact that it had on marginalized communities and people being able to make improvements to their home or even in some cases losing their homes. What could you address the impact of this problem?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing. I am a lawyer and I hadn't really heard about heirs property since like my first year of law school. They kind of covered it briefly. In property class, and then we moved on. And so, to your point, I didn't really understand the impact of it until I heard this woman's story on TV and how she couldn't get her property repaired because she couldn't prove that the property was hers. And so, to me, it's not just a matter of that particular piece of property that someone may own, but we're talking about generational wealth, right? Because if I own a piece of property and I pass it down to my children, they build on that wealth, and then that's something they can pass down to their children. And I live in right from Georgia, and right now there is 30 billion with a billion dollars worth of generational wealth that is lost here in
Oh,
this state through your property because people don't have the proper resources to make sure that their name and their namesakes and their children are properly accounted for through the property that they own. So the impact is devastating because, as I said in the book and in the afterword, this affects primarily low income, rural whites, Black and brown communities. The people who have the least of are the ones who lose the most through this sort of loophole in the law. And it's become um, it's become a real means for wealthy real estate investors to grab land that has been in families for generations. Yeah.
I know that is such a sad story. And even though
Yeah.
it wasn't highlighted hugely in the book, the whole issue of land value and property taxes, pushing people out of their homes is kind of running parallel to that,
Mhm.
to that story. So
Exactly.
it is definitely a big issue in the community.
Yeah, yeah, and I touched on that. I touched a little bit too on how
Uh-huh.
corporations will come in as well and
Mhm.
buy a property and price out first-time home buyers, and then raise, they put the properties up for rent and then price people out of their communities. So there are lots of pieces to this that just has a devastating impact on communities. Yeah.
Well, it's fantastic that you were able to highlight that in this novel.
Mhm.
And I have to say it's
Oh,
7:15, so spoilers are okay now officially, book club members. So if you have
Yeah.
not read the book and don't want to hear anything, step away now and come back and watch the recording. So if Lisa doesn't have a question from the chat already, do you, Lisa? Because I was going to
Yeah,
jump right in with Dina.
I do. I actually
Oh,
I
good.
wanted
Okay.
to share a few comments from the chat. Um, Lori says it was such a good book and she loved it. You do such a great job on character development. I can see all these characters in my head and I feel like I know them. Michelle said she loves the cover and the book, and she gave the book 5 stars. And June says, we love you, Wanda. And
I love you back.
Anissa says, you don't have to be great at all things. Your writing is amazing.
I love it, Lisa. Thank you.
We've got so much love for you in the chat. So I just wanted to um, share a few of those comments with you. And
Thank
Debbie
you.
says, the book did me in a good way. And Leah says that after she read the book, she actually did some more research on the Georgia Air property. Um, yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, her
thank you for
comment flew
that.
by after I started reading it, so I missed the end of it.
Oh,
But
thank you, thank you, thank you for that. That's exactly what I want. I want people to spark a dialogue and a conversation about this. I've had so many people come up to me at book signings and they're like, oh, this happened to my grandmother. Or we had a
Oh,
house in my family and this happened to us and we couldn't hold on to the property. And so if you know somebody that this is happening to, or it's happening in your family, please, please, please help educate people and get them to the right places so that they can hold on to what is often so very valuable. Even if it's not financially valuable, the fact that a home has been in a family for generations, that in and of itself is value. Thank you for that.
yes,
absolutely. Absolutely. And connectedness to the land is so
Yes.
important.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
Well, earlier, Wanda, you talked about your girl Dina and how she is in a lot of hurt when she comes home to Brunswick to kind of lick her wounds from all that from the ex-boyfriend, from the, well, ex-husband, to the loss of her job. And so she comes home to relax, but that is not at all what happens. As you said earlier, she meets Holcomb Gardner and everything gets turned upside down. I'm curious, Dina, she was such like a real person, and her dad was saying, all right, come on, Dina, you don't need to be in the middle of everything. How did you formulate her character to be so? It was just very endearing, and yet she was very stubborn and very kind of strong-willed.
Let me see. So there are a couple things. First and foremost, I knew that because so here's the thing. Tell somebody that you want to write a thriller about property law. Snooze, right? So I was like, okay, I've already got a premise that sounds like it could potentially bore people to death. So I knew that I would need a really, really interesting character. And because heirs property just decimates a community, I knew that I was going to have a fighter, right? Because this was going to have to be a woman that was going to have to fight for a community. Um, I also knew that she would have to be like a reluctant hero, um, simply because that's a big undertaking to say that I'm going to save my, entire community is a big undertaking. And so I wanted her to start at a place where she was really, really broken. And to me, I don't think that there is any other place where you are more broken than when you lose a loved one. And um, I used to say that I would never write a book about grief because, I think the feelings around grief can be so raw and you don't know where you're finding your readers, right? Somebody could have just suffered a loss of a loved one.
Mhm.
And, they pick up your book, they don't really know. And, that has to be pretty devastating. But I went against my better judgment because, like I said, I wanted Dina to be really broken. And I remember how I felt when my mother died. I, it was like I was unmoored. I didn't even I couldn't even feel myself anymore. And that's a really, really, I don't want to say bad place. It is a place that is is deep. And to say that you're going to help somebody else when you're in that place, everybody would be reluctant, right? Like I can't get involved in anybody else's problems because I'm still trying to grapple with my own. And so that's kind of how her character came about. Those were the things I wanted in her character. But whenever I put my books together, I always like to put my protagonist in the middle of a cast of characters that feel really real to me. And
Mhm.
they are the ones, the characters kind of bounce one off of the other. And so, Dina's father telling her, get out of that man's business. Well, he had some
Multiple
secrets himself.
times.
Oh, right. So he's telling her, get out of that. And they're like bumping heads. And so that's kind of where, her toughness and her stubbornness comes because she's like, any other time, he'd be like bending over backwards to help somebody out. And now all of a sudden he doesn't want to. So that just made her all the more, um, that much more determined to find out what was going on. Because it's like, what's his deal?
Yeah.
Um, and then you had Rue, who was bending over backwards trying to help Dina and be like, a surrogate mother. And Dina was having none of that, right? She's like,
Mm-mm.
nobody can replace my mother. And so again, because the two of these characters are kind of interacting with each other, then that's what makes the protagonist behave in ways that she does. And so my hope is always that people not only like my protagonist in my book, but they look around at maybe one or two of the secondary characters and they're like, oh, yeah, I have a Rue in my life. Or, you know, Uncle Duke, for example. Uncle Duke
Oh
is
my
based on
gosh.
like my own
I
uncles, right?
loved Uncle Duke. I loved I mean, so many characters I loved, and I loved Ray. I mean, it was,
Yes,
yeah,
right.
your characters are great.
I think we should ask our readers too what character they found most interesting of the supporting characters. What do you
Yeah,
guys think? I
yeah,
have my
let us
pick.
know in the chat. And while they're answering that, well, actually, well, who's your favorite, Brenda?
Um, I think my favorite was Rue or Ruth because she was in a very precarious situation, but she was trying to help Dina even before we knew all of the other strands that we'll probably talk about in a few minutes. So I'm going to say Ruth, but there's an argument for another one. Let's see if it's yours.
Um, ah, I loved Uncle Duke, but I also loved Ray. Like Ray just reminded me of my cousin Desiree. I was like, I know her. She is so like in my family. So it's hard for me not to pick her because I mean I already loved her from like the first word she spoke. So
Thank you
do
for
you have
that.
a favorite that you do you have a favorite that you wrote for this book?
Oh gosh, people always ask me that about all of my books, and that is like I have three kids in this picture
Yep.
back here. Asking me which is my favorite kid. I cannot. I love each one of them for what they bring to the story, right? Uncle Duke and Jimmy bring strength to the story, right? You
Hmm.
know, Rue brings this sense of peace to the story that despite all the pushback that she gets, she is still there. She is still kind of helping. Ray, to your point, Lisa, Ray brings in your face, who
Yeah.
are you? Well, yesterday you stood on my porch and you wanted to know who Holcomb Gardner was. Oh, but now all of a sudden you can't get involved, right? And
Yeah.
so I love each one. Howie, oh my gosh, I love
Oh,
Howie, right?
yes.
Howie
Yes.
is his love interest. And, he's decided I screwed up. I'm going to get her back. And she is like, I'm not having that. I got a
Not having
whole
it.
bunch of other stuff going on in my
You
life.
are way down on the list, buddy.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. So I love all of the characters because they each bring something different to the story. And in the process, they each lift um Dina up. Like Dina looks around at Ray and Mrs. Trainer and she sees how they all handle death and she goes, oh, okay, right? And so everybody is bringing something to the story and they're bringing something to Dina. And for me that's what I like about, stories that involve, families and communities. It's that whole how they all interact and bounce off of each other.
Well, we have in the chat a lot of Uncle Duke fans. Michelle said Uncle Duke was great. Lori loved Duke. Michelle said I liked Ray too. Edie says Uncle Duke. Lee says I love Uncle Duke. He was fearsome and so supportive of Dina and a great brother for Jimmy. And Meg
Yeah.
Walker just checked in. Hi, Meg, and says, Welcome,
Hey,
Wanda.
Meg.
Hey, Meg.
Um, so you can keep those questions and keep letting us know your favorites in the chat. I also have an advanced question that I want to ask from a special book club member that you may know. His name is Ron Block. He
I
says to
love
tell
Ron
you
Blanc.
he loves you
He,
too.
he is
He
my
said,
he is my brother from another mother. I love Ron Blanc.
We're pretty fond of him too. We've adopted him as our co-host for Happy Hour, and we will never, ever, ever let him go. He's stuck with us forever. Um, so he wanted me to tell you that he adores you so much, but he wanted to ask, why do you feel it's so important to share cultural history such as the Gullah Geechee people in your work?
Mm. That's a great question. For this particular book, it was super important to me because the Gullah Geechee community in low country areas, the southeastern part of the country, is a community of people that is being really decimated by heirs property because the Gullah Geechee community are direct descendants, like they can tie back um, their roots directly to formerly enslaved people that were brought to this country. And that community has stayed intact. Now, when during Reconstruction, when a lot of plantation owners decided they could no longer make money off of enslaved people, what they did is divided up their property and either sold or deeded it off to formerly enslaved people. Excuse me. That land had been in families for generations. And a lot of times that land was property that was in areas that other people didn't want, right? It was mosquito infested, alligator infested land, particularly along the coast in the Golden Islands. Um, but these families held on to that land. But now real estate developers know what to do with that land, right? They know how to get rid of the alligators and the mosquitoes and everything else that makes that land unattractive. And so that property is now very, very valuable, particularly when it's along the ocean front. And so this community is being decimated by heirs property. And so it was really important for me to situate the book there. The second reason why it was so important was because Gullah Geechee people are so tied to the land, right? There is a belief within their culture that, you know, we all kind of come from this land, we toil this land, and there's this interconnectedness between the land and the Geechee people. And I thought it would be a really appropriate setting, particularly for kind of how the book ends, that this would be a community that would not only kind of give a bit of a history lesson, but would also kind of give a taste of what the future is like for this particular community if we don't do something about heirs property. That makes
Um,
sense?
yes, it does. Totally. Um, we have another question from the chat. Anissa would like to know what was your favorite scene to write and why?
Hey, Anissa. I love Anissa. So what was my favorite scene to write? Um, Probably the ending. Yeah. I say that because the ending kind of wraps up what I was trying to say through these different um, strings of the story. For example, the the mansion where Dina worked, uh, this whole idea of grief and how we deal with grief, and this legacy of love, and what does that entail, and what do you do when you love someone or something so much? Are you willing to give it up? And so I think that scene, excuse me, and the interstitial scenes where the voice is talking and kind of narrating the story, um, were really fun for me to write because of those things, but also because it gave me an opportunity to kind of dip my toe into um, a piece of genre that I hadn't really explored before, which was kind of paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never like written that before, and I thought, and because it is kind of important, not kind of, very important to the Gullah community, which is, you know, the beliefs that they brought over from Africa, you know, whether it was music, religion, food, which figures prominently in the book, all these things. But I think it kind of dovetailed nicely with that because in the Gullah Geechee community, the ancestors are very, very important. And it's so funny. If I could just, you know, go off on a tangent for a minute. When I was young, I'm talking like 14, 15 years old, my mother used to always say, "Oh, we're Geechee." And I never like explored that with her. I didn't stop and say, what does that mean? And, but something would happen or she would react to something. And she's like, well, I do that because we're Geechee. And I never knew what that meant. And so it wasn't until I started researching
Yeah.
for this book and I was like, oh my gosh, my mom used to do
Wow.
that. Oh, yeah, we used to eat that growing up. And it was almost like it was full circle. And I kid you not, I did not intend to write this book for that reason. It was only when I started to research and the pieces came together, and I was like, oh, now that makes sense, which is just
Wow.
that's kind of crazy town to me. That's a kind of woo-woo factor that, I was like, oh, yeah, that's
That's
that piece of the
awesome.
book that, yeah, goes into your writing. You're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that.
That's
Oh, that's
fascinating.
awesome.
It just
hmm
makes it's just a stamp of approval that you were supposed to write this book.
it really is. And it's so funny because, like I said, when I was researching the book, I was doing like book research at the library and things like that. And then, as these pieces came together and remember that. And then I started calling cousins up and I was like, did Uncle Bob ever tell you that we were Geechee and stuff? And he's like, oh, you need to talk to cousin Lillian. And I tracked down, like she's actually my mother's cousin, but tracked down like a second cousin and came to find out all this wealth of information. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it really was kind of that woo-woo factor that went into this book that I really didn't expect. But I love it. Love, love, love it.
Yeah, I loved it too. You
Yeah.
mentioned the end, and one of the things that we wanted to know, did you know, and again, we're well past spoilers, but I'm just saying it again in case someone missed it. Did you know that Claire was the mastermind all along, or did it hit you while you were writing the story?
Claire being the mastermind, I knew that Claire would be involved when I sat down to write the book. I thought that she was going to be involved because she would support her nephew, like that kind of blood is thicker than water kind of thing. And it was
Mm,
only when I started writing the pieces of how the whole scheme came together. And I was like, oh, somebody has to be at the helm of this. And I thought this might provide a nice gotcha kind of moment if
Oh, it did.
yeah, initially it was just going to be like, oh, that's my nephew, don't touch him, he's okay, because he was intimately involved obviously, but it was like, nah, the scheme is bigger. And particularly
Yeah.
when it got into the real estate trusts that were, kind of all behind it. And I thought, yeah, this scheme needs somebody at the helm. And I thought, yeah, she would be a nice little addition.
Uh-oh. I have to tell you, when it was bad enough that it was Claire because she was the one person at the company, that didn't treat her like dirt.
Mhm.
Um, but it was bad enough. But when she walked down the stairwell with Holcomb Gardner's dog, I was like,
yes.
step away from the dog.
The
That's
dog had
right.
me. I turned into Ray in that moment. I was like,
You're not going to take his dog.
not the dog lady. She's going
Yeah.
down.
It's like, yeah, that is one cold lady. Like,
Yeah,
that
Yes.
was that man's dog, and she's sitting there stroking that dog and drinking champagne right in front of Dina. I was like,
I
oh,
know.
yeah,
That was
she's
so well written because I was so into it. And I did a mixture of audio and the book. And I have to say, the narrator for the audiobook is fantastic.
fantastic. When
I
I
mean,
heard
fantastic.
the audiobook, particularly the interstitial chapters, the narrator chapters, that
Oh, I need to listen.
it was like she crawled into my head and she heard what is because she had everything. She had the accent, she had the patois, she
Yes.
had the whole Gullah
It
Geechee package
really,
down.
yeah, it
I was
really
just
added
like,
to it.
oh my gosh. She at one, there's one chapter, I can't remember which one, but she comes back into the story and she has this kind of cackle laugh. And I get chills now thinking about it. Like
Yeah,
just her doing that, I was like, that's exactly, yes, yes.
yeah,
She was phenomenal,
it was
phenomenal.
so good. And
She
one
really,
of the things, and this is another big pat on the back to you and your fantastic writing, but one of the things I really loved about it is with all of the um paranormal, the bleeding walls and the house really being like a character in the story. Um it wasn't scary. It was like the perfect line of mystery. It was very mysterious, but we weren't afraid. And it was just that fine line between mystery, but not getting into horror. And I don't know how you did that so perfectly because people that don't like scary type books would totally still love this book, like Brenda. And
But I love
it
this
was
one.
just a fine
But
line
like
that
she
you
said, it
walked.
didn't.
Yeah.
you know what? I'll tell you how I did it. I am a big scaredy cat. Like, I will read limited amounts of horror, but I am a big scaredy cat myself. And so, funny story, true story. I am working on one of the scenes. And I was here at my house. I right in this little room off my living room. And I was in here. My husband was at work, my son was at school, so I was at home by myself. And I'm writing a scene, and it's like a scary scene. Since we're talking spoilers, I guess I can tell you the scene.
Oh
It's
yeah.
the scene where Dina is at home alone, and
Mhm.
she has kind of taken a bath and warmed up the leftovers, and she's getting ready to watch a movie on Netflix, and she hears a noise. I was writing that scene, and no lie, I hear a noise while I'm writing, right? And so I'm like, hmm, nah. So I keep writing. And then I hear the noise again. And I'm like, okay, this time I got to get up and go do something about it, right? So, so I get up from the chair and I kind of ease out and I'm listening and I don't hear the noise again. So I'm like, maybe it was outside, whatever. I come back in, I sit down, I start writing. 10 minutes later, I hear the noise a third time. I was like, that's it. I put my writing away for the day. It's like, I can't finish that scene right now. I'm too scared. So for me to
I
be
love
dipping
that.
my
I know, that's awesome.
me to dip my toe
Delilah.
into ghost and things of that nature.
I
You know, I've heard that writers should always push themselves beyond kind of their fears. I think I did that. It's like, I'm good. No
you
more.
did, and you
We're done.
knocked it out of the park because, like, just Dina in the attic, or when she hears the noises, and it's like most of the time you're like, "Oh my gosh!" But I'm like, I still felt safe when I was reading it. I knew I was like something, it's like I wanted to know, like, yes, go investigate it. And most of the time you're like, "Girl, run or get out." You're not, you're
It was
telling you to
kind
go
of an
away.
up it was kind of an uplifting scary, like that
Yes,
they were
'cause the
protecting
yes,
her.
I
I'm
that's such
curious
a
what
good
other
word.
people think about
Protection, that's
that.
a good word.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it was. It was the ancestors that were protecting her. And then remember when I guess we can talk now that kind of the narrator of the story is Delilah, the woman who was killed,
Yes.
Malcolm's
Mhm.
sister. And so when Delilah realizes Dina is in real big trouble, but she still doesn't trust me enough. Because remember, Dina's kind of like, what is going on in this house? So now, and remember, Delilah is part of the house. So Delilah is like, she still doesn't trust me enough. I need to get help. So Delilah goes and gets the other ancestor, who is none other than Dina's mother.
Dina's
And the
mom.
two women together join forces to help save Dina. So, yeah.
I love that. And especially the end where the house kind of, collapses, but you see the two figures coming out the top, and
Yeah. Yeah. I had a lot
they
of fun with that scene. Yeah, I
they
really,
they did they did protect her.
yeah, they
Well, I'm
really,
sure we've got a lot of stuff going on in the chat, but I just haven't. And this is more of a comment than a question, but maybe you can find a question in here somewhere, Wanda. But to me, this novel was so amazing because of the connectedness of everything. It was connectedness with ancestors, connectedness with townspeople, connected with generations. And I wonder how much of that was present at the beginning. I'm trying to create a question because I'm like floundering, but it was so interesting.
thank you. Thank you so much. But you don't have to have a question. I think what you did is you made an observation, because that is really the heart of the book, is this whole theme of connectedness and love and legacy, right? And so when Dina returns to her hometown, she thinks, I'll kind of come back into this kind of small, sleepy town. Everybody will leave me alone, and I can just sit there and grieve or whatever it is she thinks that she's going to do. But that's not how, a community that is steeped in love and legacy works, right? Everybody is asking her, because she says at one point, everybody's always asking me, how am I? Are you okay? Are you okay? But that's what people do, right? When they love you and they care about you, they want to make sure that you're okay. And then she has these two, OGs, as I like to call them, or as Howie calls them in the book. She's got, her dad and Uncle Duke, who are like, well, if you thought you were coming out here to meet some guy that, shouldn't even be on the bottom of my shoe, then you're wrong, because that's what we do. We take care of the people that we love. And so, that was like, I hope what I tried to do was create this theme of connectedness through the book, and even the connectedness between Dina and her mother. She's grieving this loss. Meanwhile, she doesn't realize that her mom is still with her. All that love that she had for her mother, that doesn't go away when, her mother
Mhm.
died. All that love is still there. It's now kind of packaged up in longing and sorrow, but then all of that kind of eventually melts away, and you still have all that love and all that wisdom. And those are, that harkens back to the title, What You Leave Behind. So those are the things that you leave behind, in addition to, standing property, but you leave behind this love and this legacy of wisdom and all these things. And it's only when she starts to see other people like Ray and Mrs. Trainer and all these other people, even Uncle Duke, who has lost his wife, and he talks about how he now builds this place, this space for people to come in and talk, the barbershop, right? And he's like, I do
Yeah,
this so that I don't miss, his wife. And so those are the things that you leave behind.
perfect way to say it.
Mm.
Um,
Absolutely.
I do have another advanced question from Michelle. She wanted to clarify. She said, are Dina and Ray aunt and niece? It was alluded to, but not said in the story.
No, they are not, but that's kind of one of the red herrings, right? As you're reading,
Ah,
because my hope
yep.
is
Mhm.
that right when they, kind of find these love letters, you're like, oh, wait a minute. So is that
Uh-huh.
like who I think it is? And no, because, Dina's father explains he was really, really, really in love with Delilah. And Delilah,
Hmm.
whether she loved him or not, she turned him away because she went off with another guy and she got pregnant. And that
Yeah.
was Ray's that she got pregnant with. And so, he still loved her. But again, hearkening back to Community, Dina's mom comes in and she kind of retrieves Jimmy at this really low point in his life. And then she winds up marrying him, much like what Rue did, right? Because
Yes.
Ruth, comes in and Jimmy is at this really low point after Dina's mom dies. And Ruth comes in and she kind of helps him. So, yeah. But no, they are not related. That was kind of a red herring.
Okay. She thought she wanted clarifications. There you go. Brenda, do you
Well,
have a question? Oh,
I had one quick one. I know I can't believe it, but we're almost at our hour already, and
oh
we
my
have a few
goodness.
wind up questions we need to ask you. I just wanted to touch on the city commissioner for a moment because I think there's someone kind of like this gentleman in many communities, and you're laughing. I know
Uh-huh.
Yes.
too smooth, too I don't know, well spoken, but he sells out his community, and I just wanted to explore that a little bit in his role, because I have to tell you, even though I was thrilled that when the ending happened, but I was equally thrilled to see that he was captured at the airport on his way trying to get out of the country. So I was like,
Yeah, yeah. And I thought it was fitting to someone asked me, well, why didn't you set it up so he could be in the house and he could, go kaboom with, Claire and everybody else. And I said the reason why is because that guy was so committed to looking good and looking smooth that I thought it was more fitting that he would be relegated to wearing an orange jumpsuit for the rest of his
I
life.
totally agree.
Right? Like that guy was always Mr., smooth and Mr. Silk suit. And I thought, yeah, he needs to be in slides and a jumpsuit for the rest of his
I
life.
totally agree. I was like,
Here's
yeah, he's going to prison.
yes, he's going to prison for a long time.
Um,
Here's the thing with him. He is somebody that we probably all seen on a TV news station, somebody that we've seen in our community. He is a person who many people would expect to trust, and a lot of people do trust, and he betrays that
mhm.
trust, right? And I'm not saying all politicians are bad, but I'm
No,
saying there is a certain segment of politicians that are in it for the wrong reasons. They are not
Mm,
in public service to serve.
right.
And that's what he was. And the fact that he would sell out the people in his community for an extra dollar is the type of stuff that gets my blood boiling.
Yeah.
And I thought, when you think about heirs property and real estate illegal land grabs, there's a whole panoply of characters that makes that happen. And so I wanted to give yet another example of the kind of people who would be involved in decimating a community, even their own community, at the expense
Mhm.
of their people. Yeah.
One quick comment from Leah. She says Commissioner Charlie Lester was a snake, and I love that she had him captured because he would look good in an orange jumpsuit.
Oh, see, Lena gets
he
it.
got you
That's
covered.
exactly right.
Um,
Oh,
we are starting to
The
wrap
other
up.
thing, if I
Oh,
could just say too, the other thing is understand too that this is not a black and white issue, right?
mm,
That this happens to people who are poor and disenfranchised. This happens to
Yeah.
people who are uneducated about how to protect their resources, or this happens to people who don't have access to the resources to help them protect their land. So this could happen to Black people, white people, brown people, whomever. And that's what I wanted to convey to. And the people who make these bad things happen can be Black people and white people and all
Mm,
shades of people. This is
yeah.
not a Black and white issue. This is a class issue.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. One thing we wanted to ask before we can't let you go without asking because a couple of people have mentioned it. Um, can you give us an update with the TV show, All Her Little Secrets and Uzo Aduba?
Wish I could give you more. But Uzo is a very busy woman these days. Apparently, she did a play and now she signed up to do another TV series. In the meantime, they are working on the two episodes. The first two episodes is a pilot that they have to write, and a second
Nice.
episode. And once those are greenlit, then they'll start to film. But she had a baby, she had a play, she has
Yeah,
another TV show
she's
to
had a
play.
lot going
Girl,
on.
she has a lot going on. So
She's so
fingers
talented,
crossed.
though. She's
Yes.
such a
Oh my God.
talent.
I cannot even describe to you the feeling of joy is an understatement. But the fact that somebody who is so super talented, who has kind of, the acting, chops to make a character so nuanced, read my book and wanted to play the lead is like mind-boggling, right? So I am still super excited. It's been a slow process, but fingers crossed that it will happen.
It's
So
amazing. Yay.
Well, Wanda, I know our time, it's already 3 minutes to 8, so our time is just about up, but we wanted to ask you a couple things. One, I know you're in the middle of a busy book tour. So tell us where readers can find signed copies of your book if they'd like one.
okay. Absolutely. Hey, if you're in Charleston, South Carolina area, I just signed books there last week at Buxton.
Yay.
Oh, I
But
love Buxton
yeah,
book.
I
Yeah, we've been to Buxton.
love that bookstore. Yes, they are so wonderful and generous. If you're in the Atlanta area, there's signed copies at Acapella Books and Bookworm Bookstore. And certainly I love all my readers. Feel free to reach out. You can find me on my website, wandamorriswrites.com, and I'm on all the social media. I think all of them except maybe Blue Sky or something. I figure I don't have room for one more social media platform. But yeah, stay in touch. I love talking to readers. And I am resurrecting my newsletter. So
Oh, yay.
go to my
Yay.
website and sign up, wandamorriswrites.com, sign up for the newsletter. It is coming. I guarantee you folks, it is coming.
Wonderful.
Yay.
That's great news.
Good. So everybody can go sign up and we'll definitely share that on the page again too, with a picture or whatever to make sure everybody gets that message to sign up.
Great.
Yeah.
This went by so fast, ladies. I love
Way too
talking to you.
fast.
Yes.
It
Too
really did.
good.
And
It really
Lisa, were
Thanks
you going
so
to ask
much. Oh,
about Crime Con?
well, well, if we can get it in. I don't want to
Can
keep
we
her
squeeze
too.
in another 20 seconds?
Come on, ask me anything. Come on, I got a few
Okay.
minutes.
So I know for people that are, I don't know if people are aware, but you have a really cool event coming up with the Georgia Writers Museum and the Southern Mystery Writers called Southern Fried Crime Con. And it's September 27th and 28th at the Lodge on Lake Oconee. But can you tell us a little bit about the event?
Oh my gosh. It is a conference for all stages of writers and mystery writers in particular. I will be giving a workshop entitled "Can I Actually Do That?" And it can I
I love
actually
it.
do that? And it is blending genres in your mystery. And so we'll explore, whether you want to spice up, your mystery with a little romance or,
Oh, I love
take
that.
readers on a thrill ride with sci-fi. But we're going to talk about melding and mixing genres. And then, so that's at like the afternoon, Saturday afternoon. And then Saturday evening, I will be delivering the keynote for the dinner for the conference. So I am
Oh,
so excited. I love the Georgia Writers Museum. They have been so supportive of my career. And so anything I can ever do for them, I'm always here. So if you're around at the end of this month, like Lisa
yeah.
said, September 26th, 27th, I believe,
And the 28th.
27,
Yeah.
yeah, September 27th, 28th. Please join us. And you can find more information at georgiawritersmuseum.com, and you go to their events page and they'll take you to it.
Yes. And I have to say, as someone who has had the pleasure of sitting in on one of Wanda's workshops, if you're a mystery writer, you don't want to miss it because I learned a lot from your workshop at the Highland Writers Conference, and it was my favorite
That
of the
was
entire day. And you're just amazing all around. We love you. We're so glad that you came and joined us tonight and spent this hour with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you, Brenda, Lisa. You guys are
Linda
the
Lisa.
absolute Brenda, Lisa.
Thank
Yeah,
you
it's
so
kind of
much,
like that.
Wanda.
Yeah, Ben Affleck, Jennifer.
I like
Thank
that.
you
That's
so
going to
much.
be our alternate
Yes,
nickname, Brenda Lisa.
Thank you
I
so
love it.
much for having me, ladies. Take care, everyone,
Thanks,
and thanks
Wanda.
for
Take
coming out and
care.
listening to me. All right, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Yeah. Oh, my screen's gone. Oh, my goodness. That was so much fun.
I love her. She's the best. And I'm serious. She's amazing. Kimberly Brock just said, I'm obsessed with Wanda Morris. We are too, Kimberly.
Yes, we
Speaking of,
are.
now that we're in the after show, speaking of Kimberly Brock, she
Yes.
our lovely, lovely November book club pick. And I believe, Brenda, if you want to go ahead and remind people of our upcoming book dates, we can do that.
Okay. I am going to
My
do that right now.
Brenda Lee.
Um, yes. So, October 21st, we have House of Glass by Sarah Pekkanen.
Woohoo.
November 18th, as we mentioned Kimberly a moment ago, The Fabled Earth by Kimberly Brock. We have
Yay.
a new date to share out with you. Our Friendsgiving Zoom is going to be on November 25th. And
Yay.
then we will have another quarterly happy hour with Mr. Ron Block and a special guest on December 5th. And then I'm really excited about this too. We're going to close out the year with on December 16th with a Christmas duet by Debbie McComber. So excited about all of the
I
picks this
know.
year.
We're having a great year. It's been amazing. And as another reminder, for those of you that are doing our awesome reading challenge, this month, the challenge, as in September this month, because I have to remind myself what month it is too.
Me too.
But I'm like, what month are we in? The challenge is to read a true crime book. And we've seen so many people post what they're reading or what they're going to read. So keep those coming. We love seeing everybody's book recommendations and what they're reading. And next month, I'm super excited for. October, which the prompt is Team Werewolf or Team Vampire. You decide. So, Anissa, who heads up the reading challenge, always posts a lot of recommendations. But I also want to give a shout out to one of our book club members. Her name is Heather Sparks, and she does a great job. She's been posting um, a little graphic where everyone can post for the month coming up with suggestions, and it's a great conversation piece. So you can find Anissa's recommendations and also Heather's post in the feature tab on our page to get ideas for the reading prompts.
That's a great addition too. I noticed her post and that was really helpful because I'm kind of like, I need, I'm going to
Yeah.
decide, but I need like Team Werewolf or Team Vampire Light.
See that one, I'm like, I have a million
I know you're all
choices for
in.
me, but I needed help with true crime. I'm like, I don't know what I want to read. And I was like, should I read this? Should I read that? And then I looked at Anissa's recommendations. And then I went to Heather's post and I was seeing what people were in posting. So I kind of like did a little marry of the two. So, and then I came up with something else altogether.
Yeah, I know the true crime was hard for me too, mostly because like Wanda, I'm kind of a scaredy cat and I tend to get too scared, but I'm reading Columbine, which is, about I guess the first,
Yeah,
big school shooting. And
that's
there's a lot of information that wasn't accurate that came out in the beginning. And so I kind of went a little bit different direction, but it's still,
yeah,
our members can
it's
interpret it
still
however
true
they would like.
crime.
Yep.
Yeah, for me, I I like scary, but to me, true crime is what's really scary. Like horror isn't scary to me, like vampires and werewolves, that's not scary to me. But when you talk about a serial killer that targeted women or rapists or
And
something like that,
they really
then
did. Yeah.
that's scary to me because that could actually happen. So
Well, that
I
makes
went a
sense.
totally different route, and I'm reading a book called Never Saw Me Coming. And it's about an African American woman who outsmarted the FBI and the entire banking system and pocketed $40 million. Hey, look, if you're going to commit a crime and you don't hurt anyone and you end up with $40 million in your pocket, I kind of want to know how you got that done. What does that
Ah,
say about me? This is the book.
okay. Lisa now officially on the FBI watch list.
Hey, I didn't say I would do it. I just want to know how you did it
I'm just saying.
and how you lived to write a book about it. Like
Ah,
this is a published, hey, call it a crime, call it a whatever you want to call it. So
oh,
that's
that's funny.
my book for this. That's my true crime book.
I think on that note, we probably need to close it down.
Y'all know we live up to our names. Brenda by the book, Lisa gets lit. Brenda Lisa, PB&J, whatever you want to call us,
Ah,
we're for you. We love you guys. Tonight was awesome with Wanda. Again, this book was amazing. And we will see you right back here next month
next month.
for our
Yes.
next book, House of Glass. So thanks for joining us. Happy reading. PB&J out.